Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Mark Carney set to unveil new cabinet at swearing-in ceremony early next week. Plus, prior to becoming Pope, Robert Prevost's past social posts include criticism of Trump and a spar with Vice President Vance. We share the details. And the Oilers head home after a 5-4 OT win in Game 2 of their second-round playoff series against Vegas.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. This election of a new Pope Thursday continues to reverberate throughout the Catholic Church and around the world. American Cardinal Robert Prevost was selected, choosing the name Pope Leo XIV. It is notable that he's the first American Pope, and as we find out in this report from the Associated Press, prior to becoming Pope, he did have some social media skirmishes with the Trump administration.
Newly elected Pope Leo XIV is in a new job that will have many crossovers into politics. It's a realm not entirely unknown to the Chicago-born priest. Before becoming Pope, his social media history included sharing criticism of Trump administration policies and of comments by Vice President J.D. Vance. The majority of then Cardinal Prevost's posts on the X platform are related to or in support of Catholic news and church initiatives. But he recently took a jab at Vance by sharing an article critical of him on the platform X. In early February, he shared an article from a Catholic publication with the headline, quote, "J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others." And his last X post before becoming Pope was critical of the Trump administration. Many of Prevost's posts involve immigration policy. Prior to his first February post, he had been dormant on X since July of 2023.
After Pope Leo XIV was announced, President Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform, quote, "What a great honor for our country. I look forward to meeting Pope Leo XIV. It will be a very meaningful moment," end quote. The pastor of All Saints Roman Catholic Parish here in Lethbridge says parishioners are getting used to the idea of an American Pope, but at morning mass today, some grade 6 students put things into perspective when asked what kind of Pope they wanted.
And then one of the kids said something very profound. He says, "We want a good leader who will lead us all to eternal life." And I'm listening to the kids, and the thing is, they're not saying anything about a conservative pope or a traditional pope or anything like that. They're just focusing on the gifts of the Holy Spirit and the fruits of the Holy Spirit that should come from this pope. And I think that's where most of us need to go. Those little kids had a better grasp on what the church should look forward to from this pope. A compassionate man, an honest man, a trustworthy man, a loving man, someone who is open to the diversity of the world. And I think that's what we got.
The Vatican says Leo will be formally installed as Pope at a Mass on May the 18th. Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to unveil his new cabinet at a swearing-in ceremony at Rideau Hall Tuesday morning. Carney swiftly named 23 MPs to his cabinet after winning the Liberal leadership in March. He also committed to gender parity in his cabinet. He's expected to recall Parliament on May 26 and has announced that King Charles will deliver the speech from the throne that next day. Alberta's opposition party is sounding the alarm over changes to how hospitals will operate. Bill 55, the Health Statuses Amendment Act, if passed, would transfer frontline public health services out of Alberta Health Services to Primary Care Alberta. The government says moving public health to Primary Care Alberta is to allow AHS to focus on delivering acute care services. But the NDP says this is the beginning of the government's plan to have hospitals run by private operators. The New Democrats want amendments to the bill.
These amendments will specify that our hospitals are publicly funded, and publicly operated. When you or someone you love goes to the ER or needs life-saving surgery or has cancer, the people making decisions about you and your care should be focused on the patient, not the profit. Patients should never be discharged until a health professional determines they no longer need health care. And we will have an amendment to ensure that patients needing care cannot be transferred to a motel, hotel, shelter, or the streets. Our hospitals are owned by Albertans. We paid for them. We need to ensure that they are operated with a purpose in mind to care for Albertans.
We're facing shortages of healthcare workers across all disciplines, professions, and services. It's already tough enough. It's already worse that in healthcare, we cannot staff and fill positions. And the uncertainty that it's going to create further will make it even tougher. Instead of privatizing, this government needs to focus on training, recruiting, respecting, and retaining more healthcare workers.
The NDP and unions call Bill 55 a complete abdication of the government's responsibility to care for Albertans. Now, according to a recent study done by the Fraser Institute, private costs are on the rise due to long wait times for medical care. This study sheds even more light on the fact that something needs to change in Canada's healthcare system. Nadeem Ismail, senior fellow with the Fraser Institute, says Canadians are not getting the value of care for the money they're putting into the system.
We're paying enough to have a world-class universal access healthcare system, but because we are wedded to this Canadian model of no private parallel option, no alternative, we're wedded to public provision of hospital services, we're wedded to not having user fees or cost sharing, a small fee to access the healthcare system, what we end up with is a less efficient and less effective healthcare system. If we look to countries like Switzerland, Germany, the Netherlands, where wait times are not systemic, they're not endemic, there are still some delays in the system, but it's nothing like the wait times we have here in Canada. We see cost sharing, private competition, private alternatives, all of those policies we're told will fail in Canada. In fact, when we look abroad, create far more efficient and effective healthcare systems.
Catch my full interview with Nadeem Ismail with the Fraser Institute coming up later on in the program. As cases of measles in Alberta have now hit 326, Alberta Health Services warns of another series of measles exposures in southern Alberta. There were 5 exposures in Medicine Hat on May the 1st at Costco, the Real Canadian Superstore, Home Depot, Canadian Tire, and a Walmart store. Most of those happened in the late morning and early afternoon. On May 2nd, there was an exposure in the emergency department waiting room at the Tabor Health Center, and another on May 3rd in the emergency department waiting room at the Medicine Hat Regional Hospital. There were also 2 incidents at the Medicine Hat Medical Arts Center, one on May 2nd and a second exposure on May the 6th. AHS says anyone who was at those locations who was born in or after 1970 and has fewer than 2 documented doses of measles vaccines may be at risk for developing measles. You should monitor for symptoms, and you're strongly encouraged to review your immunization records. For the latest information on measles in Alberta, visit ahs.ca/measles. Following the city's Economic and Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, the city is looking at splitting the existing components of the Lethbridge and District exhibition into 2 groups. The city's chief financial officer says one group would be named EventCo, which would run the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center and contain its assets and employment. And the second group will go back to their 1897 name of the Lethbridge and District Agriculture Society. The city hopes by doing so, they may maintain a flow of provincial funding and grants after a report in February showed the deficit of the LDE to be sitting at just over $2.5 million.
Some of the reasons why of doing that is there's 2 pieces that was brought forward in Economic Standing Policy Committee, which the first was actually looking at the Agriculture Society Act, some of the requirements of having a community-based organization that does that, or a not-for-profit, and also the AGLC requirements for the gaming revenues. So in that regard, there's approximately about $550,000 per year of funding that comes through gaming and the grants from the province. Those fundings would go to that Lethbridge and District Agricultural Society, so they can actually put on the agricultural events and so forth, and education through the agriculture community.
What we're doing now, we need to continue doing. So that's exactly it, and that's probably the level I can comment on is that. And I think to get this from what has been a financial pressure to ideally breaking even and maybe beyond someday in the future, you typically need to grow and expand and enhance the level of services that you offer.
The decision whether or not to split the exhibition into two organizations will be decided at a future City Council meeting. Next year, when you're filing your tax returns, there's a new checkbox that you can request more information on organ and tissue donations. Starting in the 2025 tax year, when you check that box, the province will send you an email detailing the process and next steps to become a donor. Alberta is the third province to introduce this step, joining British Columbia and Ontario, the latter which reportedly saw a 32% increase of registered donors. Toby Boulay, the father of former Humboldt Bronco Logan Boulay, says the move by these three provinces should serve as example for the rest of Canada.
I think Alberta's learned from that. And from what I've been told from the different levels of Alberta government is that it's a good thing. They're going to move the bar up again, and then we want to keep moving the bar up, move the bar forward, and that we want to have people register and to be aware and to be educated about what organ donation registration actually is. It's not like you're giving your organs away; you're registering. So if something happens to you, that your organs are available. That's about 25% of Albertans have already registered to be organ donors in Alberta. Spain's about 52%. So we have a long way to go. Kingston, Ontario is over 50%. So we have work to do in Alberta, but this is a great step towards more people being engaged, more people being educated, and more people understanding the process. And so, yeah, I'm pretty proud of what Albertans have done so far, but there's always room to grow, lots of room.
As of April 28th, approximately 900,000 Albertans have registered their consent to become an organ and tissue donor. The city of Lethbridge is warning drivers about construction that's ramping up in West Lethbridge. Repairs to a pedestrian ramp on University Drive West will impact motorists and pedestrians. The ramp at the southeast corner of University Drive and Heritage Boulevard West will be closed. All pedestrian traffic will be routed back 1 block to Heritage Crescent West. Intermittent single-lane closures will also be in effect on University Drive. Northbound and southbound traffic will be able to proceed through the intersection at a reduced speed, but there will be no access to eastbound Heritage Boulevard West from University Drive or Gary Drive West. The pedestrian tunnel underneath University Drive is not affected. This work will begin Monday, May the 12th, and is expected to take 3 weeks to complete, weather permitting. Lethbridge police are warning residents that they might hear gunfire this afternoon and into tonight. Lethbridge police cadets are participating in a low light, no light shooting exercise at the police range. It began at 2 o'clock and continues until 11:30 p.m. Those in the area can expect to hear shots being fired during that time. Police thank the public for their understanding. Lines that give life to beautiful, colorful figures are part of the Southern Alberta Art Gallery's Spring 2025 exhibition. Starting this Saturday, May 10th, the community will be able to admire the talent of elementary and high school students. Adam Whitford, SAG's Associate Curator and Exhibition Manager, says this initiative has been going on for 48 years. Whitford explains what's new this year.
This year we're focusing on youth creativity, and Arts Alive and Well in the Schools always showcases that really well. Also very unique to have this exhibition at a gallery that welcomes so many artists through every year and has been going on for so long. There's over 400 artists represented in between all the works that are physically present as well as the virtually installed on the projection and the TV.
There's communication between Lethbridge School Division, Holy Spirit Catholic School Division, as well as the Francophone School, École Vérandre, and I coordinate with the teachers, with the art representatives at those schools, and we make it happen. Art that's here is students from grades 9 to 12 in 9 different schools across the city. Virtually installed the digital exhibit that started during COVID and that has continued for K to 12, for the elementary and middle schools as well. It almost doubled from last year to this year, the number of pieces submitted.
Those are amazing. The art gallery will showcase local talent until July the 26th. In sports, the Lethbridge Hurricanes have remained busy in the offseason, even after recently bowing out in the third round of the playoffs to the Medicine Hat Tigers. This week, they participated in the U.S. Priority Draft and the WHL Prospects Draft, where they went without a pick in the first 2 rounds of the Prospects Draft. The Hurricanes picked up defenseman Liam McFadden at 54th overall, and as well as Cash Whitmore and Drew Cortan in the 23rd and 24th picks of the U.S. draft, respectively. Head scout Gary Carson says overall they are proud and excited about the picks they selected, despite picking later in each draft.
Well, I think even going back to our whole team and how it was built for this year, we had other holes to fill too. In regards to, we had brought in a lot of older forwards. And we were really happy that we got some younger, skilled guys that are going to be able to come in and compete for spots. We're happy with all the picks that we got because they all have that opportunity to play for the Lethbridge Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes also surrendered forward Cameron Norrie in the expansion draft to the Penticton Vs, who are making their transition from the BCHL to the WHL this upcoming season. And speaking of hockey, an exciting game last night. The Edmonton Oilers pulled off a 5-4 overtime win Thursday night in Game 2 of their second-round playoff series against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. The Oilers now head home to Rogers Place with a 2-game lead after winning both away games in Vegas to begin the best-of-7 series. Here is Donna Spencer of the Canadian Press.
The Edmonton Oilers head home from Las Vegas with a 2-game lead in their second-round playoff series against the Golden Knights. The Oilers pulled out a 5-4 overtime win in Game 2 at T-Mobile Arena after winning the opener 4-2. Leon Draisaitl scored the overtime winner on an assist from Connor McDavid. The Oilers' dynamic duo had been held off the score sheet until that point in the game. Edmonton got stellar goaltending and 28 saves from Calvin Pickard, who played his best game in 6 starts since taking over for Stuart Skinner in the first round. McDavid said the Oilers were fortunate to find a way to win Game 2 when the team didn't play its best. Game 3 is Saturday at Rogers Place, followed by Game 4 on Monday.
As wildfires rage in eastern Newfoundland, volunteers in the community of Small Point packed the community center full of food and toiletries and to help residents displaced by the nearby blaze. Heather Roselle, co-owner of the local general store, and volunteer Wanda Crocker say the community kept people's spirits up.
The community is amazing. Yeah, everyone pulls together. Everything we've ever had here, it's always community, and everyone gives every bit of their time.
We've had no loss of life. We have lost 21 structures, and so to lose those in the community and the people who left their homes, I mean, that's absolute devastation.
For the past month, a gray whale known as Little Patch has been mesmerizing onlookers as it feeds into Metro Vancouver waters. Jessica Scott, senior manager of the Ocean Wise Whales Initiative, says with the Vancouver Harbor being a busy shipping port, Little Patch reminds people of the city's impact on whales' habitat.
Little Patch is part of a group of roughly a dozen gray whales, and they're known as the Sounders. And this is a small subsection of our gray whale population that are known to break off from their typical migration routes from Baja California way up into the northern seas. And they come into Puget Sound waters to feed on ghost shrimp. And as far as we know, this is the first time that this specific whale has been spotted in Vancouver. We often do have a few gray whales in the area this time of year, however. And we think he's here because sediments from Vancouver's Capilano River create this really sandy bottom that's an ideal habitat for these small marine organisms that they feed on, like ghost shrimp. He's quite well known by the Cascadia Research Collective, so they are the ones who identify these whales and monitor these whales. His identity is CRC53. They've nicknamed him Little Patch because he has a distinctive white patch on his left side. And he was first known by researchers in 1991. We know that he's male, so he's around 35 years old or so. He was really close to shore, and there were a number of people also watching him. And it's pretty rare to have gray whales right in Vancouver Harbor. We usually only get a couple a year in this area. So it's a really unique experience for everybody.
Very unique indeed. Scott says despite the number of huge ships maneuvering through the harbor, Little Patch seems undaunted and simply wants to eat. Isn't that sweet? I hope he gets enough food in there. Well, here in southern Alberta, it was a gorgeous day as the mercury moved closer to the 26-degree mark, but don't put the sunglasses away. Much more of that sunshine headed our way this Mother's Day weekend. I will be right back with the full look at weather. Welcome back. Well, we are off to a gorgeous start to a gorgeous Mother's Day weekend. Maybe do something nice with Mom. Get her outside and do something fun because we're still looking at that 29-degree day on a Saturday. Looking to see if we're going to break that record of 29.4, which was set back in 1940. And then, of course, as we get into Sunday, Mother's Day, also looking at lovely temperatures, high of 24 degrees. Now, the showers that we had earlier seen for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are now being pushed back until Thursday. However, we could still see some shower activity Tuesday evening and Wednesday evening before getting into that 60% chance of showers on Thursday. So 22 still looking on Monday, still looking for the sunshine there, high of 22 degrees. 19 on Tuesday with mainly cloudy skies, and then seeing that 17 and 14 as we get back into those spring-like temperatures for Wednesday and Thursday, staying in those more average ranges there. So average high for this time of year, 18, average low, 4 degrees. 29 was the record high on this day that happened back in 1987. And on this day back in 1925, there was the record low. It was minus 4 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 5:55, so we're now seeing it in that 5 o'clock hour. And the sunset now in the 9 o'clock hour at 9:01 this evening, so seeing 4 minutes more daylight than we saw yesterday. So 15 hours and 6 minutes of daylight exactly today. 17 on the coast tomorrow in Victoria, looking at cloudy skies clearing up to a mix of sun and cloud by the afternoon there. 30% chance of showers in Vancouver, high 15. 20 in Edmonton with partly cloudy skies, and high 25 tomorrow in Calgary. Also could see a bit of winds up to 40 kilometers per hour. Mix of sun and cloud across most of the prairies tomorrow. Here Saskatoon seeing high of 28 degrees. 32 in Regina. Mainly clear skies once they clear up a little bit there, and looking at winds up to 40k and 50k in the afternoon. 26 for the high tomorrow in Winnipeg with 30% chance of showers. As we looked at the central part of the country, seeing mainly clear skies there in Toronto, high of 22, 21 for the high in Ottawa. Could see some shower activity there and periods of rain ending by noon in Montreal with a high of 14 degrees. Lots of precipitation expected in the Maritimes on Saturday. 15 to 25 millimeters of rain expected in there in Fredericton, 7 for the high. Halifax seeing 5 millimeters, but up to 20 millimeters in the areas more heavily hit. 9 degrees for the high there. 12 in Charlottetown tomorrow. Could see up to 5 millimeters of rain there as well, and 60% chance of drizzle in St. John with 6 degrees for the expected high tomorrow. There you have it. That is your forecast. The Canadian economy added 7,400 jobs in April as the unemployment rate rose for the second straight month. Stats Canada says the jobless rate rose 0.2 of a point to 6.9% last month. Canada's manufacturing sector shed 31,000 jobs as U.S. tariffs hampered the industry. Offsetting that loss was a jump in temporary employment connected to last month's federal election. ACN Rail Hub is set to proceed after Canada's highest court dismissed an appeal request that sought to halt construction of a massive rail and truck hub in the Greater Toronto Area. The $250 million project aims to double Canadian National Railway's existing line of tracks in Milton, Ontario, and construct a hub for containers to be transferred between trucks and trains. The Supreme Court of Canada decision comes after a 3-judge panel found a decision by the federal government to let CN build the terminal despite significant adverse environmental effects reasonable. TELUS says it earned $321 million in its first quarter. That is up from a profit of $127 million a year ago. The company says operating revenue and other income increased to more than $5 billion. It's raised its quarterly dividend to 41.63 cents per share. Cineplex has reported a first quarter loss of $36.6 million compared with a profit of $5.2 million a year ago. The loss comes as theater attendance fell due to a weaker film slate at the box office. The movie theater company says theater attendance amounted to 8.4 million, down from 9.8 million in the same quarter last year. Revenue fell 10% to about $264 million. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 103 points on the day to finish at 25,357. The Dow was down 119 to 41,249. The S&P 500 was down 4 points to 5,659, and the Nasdaq was up 78 cents to 17,928. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 118 to 61.09 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 19 cents to 378 US. Gold was up 793 to 33.2426 US an ounce. Silver was up 28 cents to 32.17 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.79 per bushel. Barley is at $6.92. Canola is at $16.07, and corn is at $7.57 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was up 43 cents to $214.48. Feeder cattle were up 50 cents to $297.98, and lean hogs were down 28 to $90.38 US. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at $71.80 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to unveil his new cabinet at a swearing-in ceremony in Rideau Hall on Tuesday morning. Carney swiftly named 23 MPs to his cabinet after winning the Liberal leadership in March. He also committed to gender parity in his cabinet. He's expected to recall Parliament on May 26th. Studies continue to show that Canada's public health care system desperately needs help. Nadeem Ismail, senior fellow with the Fraser Institute, talks about the private costs Canadians take on as they wait 15 weeks and even longer for care. So what can be done about this? Well, Nadeem gives us his thoughts coming up next. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or our YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. We all know that our healthcare system needs some fixing, and the wait times for surgery and diagnostic testing are simply too long. But did you ever stop to think about what the impact of wait times are on lost wages and productivity? Well, joining us today from Calgary to discuss this further is Nadeem Ismail. He is a senior fellow with the Fraser Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank. Nadeem, good to have you with us today. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Okay, so Nadeem, the Fraser Institute did a study called The Private Cost of Public Queues for Medically Necessary Care. So what was the overall financial cost to Canadians? What did you find there?
What we did is we tried to assess or examine the cost of lost full engagement in life. As people are waiting for healthcare, they're simply not able to engage fully in their lives, both at work and leisure. And when we take the proportion of waiting from a couple of different surveys and we try to understand that relative to the wait times, we find that Canadians are losing about $5 billion a year in terms of the value of time lost to waiting during the working week. If we add evenings and weekends, that cost actually rises to about $16 billion in lost wages and productivity.
Oh, isn't that fascinating in a bad way? So how many of us had to wait in line for medical treatment last year, and what does that average out to per person?
It's about 4% of the Canadian population that's waiting for healthcare right now. Per person, it works out to about $3,300 per individual. Now, that varies from some lower numbers in shorter wait time provinces like Ontario, and then it'll go up to over $6,000 in the Maritimes as we look at a couple of provinces that have remarkably long wait times, a little over $4,000 in Quebec. So just like we see wait times vary across the country, we see the cost of waiting also varying across the country for those Canadians in the queue.
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned that the average cost was higher in some of those maritime provinces, also in Quebec. So why are those provinces getting hit harder?
It's largely being driven by longer wait times. There is, of course, the income component as well. So higher incomes will lead to a higher cost of waiting. But when we look at the Maritimes, we're seeing typical wait times over 30 weeks for all surgeries and procedures, where the national wait time is down at 15, which then drives a much higher cost of waiting. And again, remembering that this is in addition to the medical costs of waiting, which include poor potential outcomes, potential risk of adverse events, potentially death as well. This is the personalized cost of the time we lose while we wait for healthcare.
That's so awful. I mean, 30 weeks, that's what, 7.5 months, going on 8 months. That's way too long to wait. So what's, speaking of waiting, what's the national average wait time from getting a referral from your family doctor to get to see a specialist appointment, and then the wait time to actually have the treatment?
The national average, as we look at the first wait time from general practitioner referral to treatment by specialist, is running 15 weeks in 2024. And then the second wait from specialist consultation to treat is another 15 weeks on top. And it's important to note that that $5 billion of time lost is on the second wait time. We haven't assessed the consequence on the first wait time.
Okay. So do these stats include the cost of friends and family members who often have to take time out of their day to drive the patient to health facilities and wait there with them, because they're taking time off of work too?
It doesn't. This is likely an underestimate because we are only looking at that second wait time and only looking at the individual who's waiting for healthcare. We're not counting any costs for friends or family members who are supporting them, assisting them with their care, or their lost productivity at work and leisure because of their worry and concern for their loved one.
For sure. So beyond the financial cost to individuals, what impact do wait times have on emotional health or physical pain and discomfort and the ability to enjoy your life, for that matter?
There's a vast literature on the consequences of delayed healthcare, and that literature shows quite clearly that there are significant and important consequences, including the risk of poorer outcomes. As you wait, you continue to deteriorate. The surgery at the end may simply just not be as successful as it might have been if care was timely. There's risk of adverse events. People can suffer heart attacks, can suffer addictions to the painkillers, can suffer damage from the painkillers they have to take while they wait. There's a risk of death, and we know thousands of Canadians each year die waiting for medically necessary health care. And then there are, of course, the personal consequences, which we're seeking to try and measure here, which are risk of embarrassment, inability to engage in your life, to do the things you enjoy, to play with the grandchildren, to play with the children, to see your friends, or to even work and support your family and do the things that you need to do to ensure that your family has a successful time while you're waiting for the care that you require.
Yeah, now we're talking adverse health events here. And you mentioned thousands of people dying. Do you have any idea the actual numbers or how wait times increase the risk of mortality or adverse health events, for that matter?
Again, as surgery is delayed, we can now see that the condition continues to advance, and some Canadians will simply not survive until the time of surgery. There have been studies done across Canada showing, first and importantly, that these mortalities are not very well measured by the provinces across the country. So it's fairly difficult to ascertain the exact number because it's simply not tracked. But from what information is available, it's thousands of Canadians a year. And over the last 5 or 7 years, it's tens of thousands of Canadians who have died while waiting for medically necessary health care.
And healthcare costs in Canada are some of the highest in the world, I'm understanding. So are our wait times improving then, staying about the same, or are they getting longer right now?
Correct. This is all happening in one of the developed world's most expensive universal access healthcare systems. What we don't have is a spending problem. We have a waiting problem. And that waiting problem is increasing and advancing over time. Year after year, we're reaching new highs for wait times. We're now at 30 weeks total, which is substantially longer than the 9.3 weeks it was back in 1993, or even the 16, 18 weeks we were experiencing in the 2000s. Wait times have just expanded considerably, which has also expanded the cost of waiting for care. As year after year, we're seeing record wait times. We're also seeing record costs of waiting for healthcare for the individual.
So Nadeem, are you finding then, what is the cause of this? What are the cause of these waiting times that are actually increasing over time? Do we just not have enough healthcare professionals in the country? What's going on exactly?
It's that we're not getting the value for the money we're already spending. We're paying enough to have a world-class universal access healthcare system, but because we are wedded to this Canadian model of no private parallel option, no alternative, we're wedded to public provision of hospital services. We're wedded to not having user fees or cost sharing, a small fee to access the healthcare system. What we end up with is a less efficient and less effective healthcare system. If we look to countries like Switzerland, Germany, the Netherlands, where wait times are not systemic, they're not endemic. There are still some delays in the system, but it's nothing like the wait times we have here in Canada. We see cost sharing, private competition, private alternatives. All of those policies we're told will fail in Canada. In fact, when we look abroad, create far more efficient and effective healthcare systems. This all said, there is one very important change about to happen in Alberta. The Smith government has recently announced we're moving to activity-based funding, or money following patients for hospital care. That does take us much closer to European models than we have been in the past. And that will likely reduce waiting times as well as give patients, our taxpayers, better value for money. So some positive change in Alberta, but we're still not there.
So you're saying that going to private care could actually increase this, or actually decrease the wait times, increase our healthcare, I guess, overall. That's what you're saying?
Okay. Private competition in the delivery of universally accessible services has been shown across the developed world to reduce waiting times to improve value for money. It has been a very important component of wait times reductions initiatives, both here in Canada and across Europe, and is an integral part or central part of high-performing universal access healthcare systems. This is better healthcare.
Okay, interesting. I do recall another study that the Fraser Institute did that was quite eye-opening, and in that it discovered it's not just our income tax dollars that fund healthcare, but even some of our employment insurance, our CPP premiums, property taxes, sales taxes, and even import duties. This is all going towards healthcare. Who knew? What's going on there? Can you explain how this works?
I think Canadians often misunderstand the true cost of the universal access healthcare system because it's funded through taxation. And so what we do every year is we take the amount of tax the average Canadian family will pay and work out what portion of that is being used to fund healthcare, because that's how we're paying for it. And if we do the math, what we find is the average Canadian family of four is paying about $18,000 a year for their universal access healthcare insurance. So healthcare in Canada is anything but free. There is a substantial taxpayer-funded cost associated with it. And when we actually do the math, it works out to about $18,000 per year for a Canadian family of four.
That's incredible. So, I mean, but sales tax, property taxes, that's really unexpected for sure. Shouldn't we be expecting a better bang for our buck on healthcare, considering where all these streams of revenue are coming from?
Absolutely, we should. We have one of the developed world's most expensive universal access healthcare systems, and yet in return, we're getting some of the worst access to physicians and medical technologies and some of the longest waiting lists for access to care in the developed world. We have plenty of money to give Canadians the best universal access healthcare system out there. The problem is governments have chosen a set of policies that are holding the system back and that are creating this terrible value for money equation for Canadians and forcing Canadians to wait on these remarkably long waiting lists and sometimes ultimately not even make it to their surgeries.
Oh yeah, so sad. So Nadeem, what kinds of changes would you like to see take place to reduce costs and to reduce those wait times?
I think we've already seen the Smith government take a very important step forward in terms of changing the way we pay for hospital care, moving from big block grants to money following patients to the facilities, which changes the incentives in the system and will reduce wait times. But if we look around the world and we look at countries like, say, Australia, very geographically similar to us, spending less on healthcare, getting shorter wait times, we see those key policies again in place. Cost sharing, or a small user fee for accessing the healthcare system to encourage more informed decision making among patients about when and where it's best to access the healthcare system. We see private competition in the delivery of universally accessible services. And then we see that private alternative, that safety valve, that option for patients who are feeling the public system is either unwilling or unable to meet their needs. Those policies together will get us to a much better healthcare system than we have today.
So, I mean, the private system is fine for people that can afford it if you have the money to do so. What about like the widow or whoever that has to rely on the public system? Would this model help them?
Absolutely. It gives a patient an option to leave the public queue. And so as they exit the public queue, that then creates an additional space in the public queue for that widow or for that patient who doesn't have the resources or doesn't wish to go to the private sector. Imagine a two-person family with a single income. If the income earner is waiting for healthcare in a lengthy queue, it makes sense for that family to put them into the private system and get them through faster. Whereas if the non-earning individual may be willing to wait longer, these are very individual and personal decisions that can be taken at an individual level. The important part is to structure the policies right. But what we can see across the developed world is that this is a better way to do universal access healthcare than what we're doing here in Canada today.
So it looks like a win-win. Are there any negatives to that model?
Any set of policies can have its drawbacks, can have its concerns. But the important part, I think, to note here is that Canada is a late reformer. We are one of the last countries in the developed world to go down the path of market-based healthcare reform. This new reform the Smith government is putting in was started in Sweden in the 1990s, was done in much of Western Europe by the end of the 1990s or the early 2000s. We're 30 years behind the rest of the developed world in reform. And so we can simply adopt and learn from the lessons that they've gone through and the policies they've put in place to avoid the pitfalls of some of these policies. Certainly no policy is perfect. Certainly any policy can go wrong. The beauty of being in Canada's position is we have 30 years of experience to rely upon to get this right the first.
Interesting. Thanks so much for your time today, Nadeem. Appreciate having you on today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
If you're like me and you've got private insurance and benefits, you may be scrolling through what is covered and wondering what you could get treatment for, especially as the year gets closer to the end or at the start of the year when our benefits reset themselves. One of those things that you may be wondering if you need it or not is osteopathy. What is it? A lot of people don't know what it is. Well, I'm here with a practitioner who's going to answer one of those some of those questions for us. I'm here with Mitchell Lawrence. He is an osteopathic manual therapist at Reset Osteopathy at the Medicine Tree in Lethbridge. Mitchell, welcome.
Hi there.
So first off, can you just tell us a little bit what osteopathy is?
So osteopathy is a holistic manual therapy and it aims to identify and treat various different conditions, injuries or just pains that you might have. We use a wide range of different techniques ranging from joint mobilization and articulation, massage techniques, releases for different muscles or complexes, as well as exercises, all of which are prescribed to the individual's needs.
So what specifically does it treat, and can you give me some examples?
So there's really no exhaustive list of what it can and can't treat. We see people with arthritis, headaches, just lower back pains and aches. We also treat nerve conditions such as sciatica or carpal tunnel, for a few of the more common ones you might have heard of. But then we can also treat things such as recovery from surgery or injuries, or such as joint replacements, things like that.
I've heard some people compare osteopathy to kind of like a merger between massage and physiotherapy and chiropractic. Is that what would you say? Is that an accurate description?
Yes, a lot of people describe it in that way, probably due to the techniques that we use. We use different soft tissue and deep tissue massage techniques, but we also address the joints and the spine to try and release tension in there. But then we do give exercises as well, and these are suitable to everyone and they are prescribed differently. So that's the physio component that a lot of people would say, but really the combination of all of them is the way that we do our treatments.
So if someone has, say, lower back pain and they've got like a lot of they feel a lot of tension in there, their muscles are tense. What's the benefit of osteopathy versus just going to see a massage therapist?
So we work holistically. So that means we won't just look at the lower back. We will maybe look at your mid back, into the areas below it, into your pelvis and hips, but even down into your legs. We also look at lifestyle, previous injuries, because all of these can either predispose or maintain the injury that you currently have. So really using all of these components helps to get to the cause of what's going on, and that will make treatment more thorough and more effective.
Okay, so I'm curious to learn more about this, and I mentioned lower back because I'm a person who's a side sleeper, and When I'm sleeping on my side, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've got pain in my sides and it radiates to my back. I do get some relief though with a pillow between my legs. Can you just explain what's going on?
So what the pillow will do is help to keep a more neutral spine and pelvis. When we are sleeping, lots of people will sleep in ways that could compromise their lower back or other areas such as their shoulders or neck. But the pillow is a really simple thing to do that can go between your legs. It shouldn't cause too much discomfort or affect the way you sleep, but it will make you wake up and not feel potentially as stiff. And then you could use that alongside exercises, for example, that we give, and that will help you get going in the morning.
It's funny that you mentioned pillows because it seems like one pillow is not enough, but two pillows is too many. Have you heard that complaint before?
Yes, and it takes our body time to adapt as well. So you might try one pillow, it might be not enough, two might be too many, but after a couple of weeks, two might be perfect. It's all different based on the individual.
So it's great that you're explaining all of this, but I'm more of a visual guy, and I'm obviously some of our viewers here are as well. Do you mind demonstrating some techniques on me, and just so the viewer can see what exactly happens during an osteopathy session?
Of course.
All right, so I mentioned I've got some lower back pain from the way I sleep. Some neck strain. What do you recommend you perform on me today?
So first we'd have to look at how the joints are moving. So to do that, I will get you to do some movements, and then I will do some movements for you.
Okay.
Then I can have a palpation in the area that's affected, and using your feedback, we can identify what is painful. And from that, we'll then get into treatment.
Okay, great. All right, let's do that.
First, would you just be able to stand facing the other direction, just so I can have a look at your back, please? Okay. So I'm just going to place my hands on your hips, if that's okay.
Okay.
And so I'm just checking the levels of different landmarks in your hips, your pelvis, and your lower back. Mm-hmm. Is there any pain when I'm pressing in there?
No. It actually feels kind of nice because it's like a mini shiatsu when you're pushing in like that.
Almost like a little bit of relief?
Yeah, like a micro massage.
Yes, I understand. And then I'm just going to get you to take a seat here, please, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you could just cross your arms like that.
Okay.
Good. And I'm just going to reach my arm around the front here.
Okay.
I'm just going to be rotating your back.
So here I can see the physio side of osteopathy.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is analysing how different parts of your back are moving. You mentioned how you've got that lower back discomfort, but sometimes we have to look elsewhere, and that could be contributing to what you've got going on.
Okay.
So would you be able to lay on your back now, please?
Sure.
If that's okay. And so we've just got, and then one leg at a time, I'm just going to lift your leg up straight. Do you feel any pain shooting down the back of your leg?
No, I just feel stretching.
Feel some tension? Mm-hmm. And if I lower your leg and pull your foot back, and then your toe, is that okay? No shooting pain? Good. And we're just going to compare the other side.
Okay. Just stretching.
Same, just that stretching. Okay, good. And then the foot and the toe. Is that okay?
Yep.
Good. So if you could roll onto your side facing me, please.
Okay.
I'm just going to take your lower back through the same movements that I've got you to do, standing up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to bend your legs. Good. And then I'm just going to move your legs towards and away from your body.
So what does you doing this versus me doing it accomplish?
So when you are doing it, you are actively doing the movement, which means you are activating the muscles as well. When I am doing it, you are passively doing that. So what it means is that your muscles aren't engaging.
Okay.
And I can have a better look at your true range of motion in the joint.
Okay.
Because sometimes if the muscle is the limiting factor, then I will be able to produce more movement than you would yourself.
Yeah, and earlier I said it feels like I'm doing a bit of physio. Now it feels like I'm getting a massage.
Yeah, this technique that I'm doing right now is a soft tissue technique, and it aims to just promote a bit of blood flow, break some tension in between the muscles. And what that will allow us to do is then move your joints and really release any tension that's in the joints as well.
Typically, do you have a certain type of client that you attract the most, like athletes or business professionals or people with sedentary lifestyles or people with very active lifestyles?
I get asked that question a lot actually, and the truthful answer is I see all sorts of people. I see a mixture of young athletes, parents who have just got stresses from work, maybe injuries or just from life, but also elderly people who have been having more chronic issues for longer. So yeah, there's no real trend to who we see. It's a really wide range of people.
That stretch you just did felt amazing.
Good, that should be helping to open up and release your lower back, but also into your pelvis.
How would osteopathy be complementary to someone who also visits a massage therapist and or a chiropractor?
So what we can do is we'll ask the patient maybe what their massage therapist or chiropractor is working on, so that we can then use that to guide our practice. But it will just help to further relax some muscles, release some tension in joints, maybe in between osteopathy appointments. So some people might come for an appointment once a month, but then in between that might go for a massage just to reinforce that relaxation.
Because I've heard that if you combine a chiropractic adjustment with a massage, the adjustment holds longer. Is that the same with osteopathy?
Because we do multiple techniques, a lot of people say that they feel after a session, it's almost as if they've had a chiropractic adjustment and a massage, because we work on the joints, not just the spine, but all the joints, as well as the muscles. So a lot of people would almost describe the effect of an osteopathic session to be that of a chiropractic and massage together. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work on your neck now. So I'm just going to see how it's moving first.
Sure.
So if I just turn your head that way and then the other way, do you see how it doesn't want to go that way?
Oh yeah.
As much.
Yeah. Is it because of side sleeping?
It could be many different factors.
Or like my pillow?
That could be a factor. Lifestyle, work, maybe previous injuries. There's lots that could be contributing to it.
I actually had a dull pain in the top of my head, and I didn't really notice it until it started going away just now. So have we become somewhat desensitized to pain?
Some people, if they've had chronic pain for a long time, the body's response to pain can change. And so some people might feel that something is less painful. Some people's bodies could get more sensitive to pain. So a stimuli that maybe wasn't sensitive in the past could now cause pain. And that's very different for every person.
What kind of training do you need to go through in order to get into this type of work?
So I trained in the UK, in Wales, and my program was a 4-year integrated masters course at Swansea University, and that's 4 years all in one go. And as part of that course, we have to do 1,200 hours of clinical practice.
Wow.
And so that is the way that you can then graduate, and after that you go straight into work.
So we know that chiropractors they have to follow regulations, same with massage therapists. What about osteopaths, or in your case, an osteopathic manual therapist?
So here in Alberta, our regulatory body is the Alberta Association of Osteopathic Manual Therapists. So we have regulations with them regarding insurance, treatments, right to practice. That's different province by province, and so it depends whereabouts in not just Canada but whereabouts in the world you are. But a lot of the regulatory bodies will be very similar in terms of right to practice, what you are and aren't allowed to do as an osteopathic manual therapist.
So obviously we've been through some techniques here, and I must say, like, I do feel a lot more, like my joints are more fluid. I can move a lot easier. Typically after an appointment, what would you recommend that a patient does to keep things kind of like well oiled?
So we try and work with what a patient would usually do in their daily life. So we try not to say that they have to limit or restrict their activities, but usually after an appointment, taking it a little bit easy is a good idea, just so that we don't strain the body. It just gives that body time to respond to the treatment, but from the next day, they can get back into their normal routine, back into training, working, whatever that might be.
Mitchell Lawrence is an osteopathic manual therapist. Mitchell, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.